I woke up to the hiss of my car's gas cap. It was wide open, like someone had helped themselves to my tank's privacy overnight. My heart slammed against my ribs before I even fully registered what was happening. It was 6:30 in the morning, and the damp, salty breeze from the Pacific was doing nothing to calm my nerves. I glanced at my partner, Alex, still curled up next to me, completely oblivious. I slid out of bed, careful not to wake Alex, and padded down the hall in my socks. In the garage, their old Chevy pickup sat exactly where we'd left it the night before, but something felt off. On the cold asphalt next to the rear tire lay a massive hunting knife, the blade dull and smeared with who knows what. My stomach sank. I snapped a photo and texted our neighbors, the McAllisters, whose sprawling farmhouse we shared a driveway with. Molly McAllister replied almost instantly, "Doesn't look like ours. We don't know whose that is." Great. Another scumbag in our little town. We'd always assumed the worst of the crews of tweaker cars that rolled through after dark, hoping to siphon a few bucks worth of gas. But up until now, they'd only taken from abandoned tractors or empty pickups. Never had they tried our vehicles until today. I went inside, brewed coffee, and tried to shake off the panic. There was nothing more I could do right now. No point in disturbing Alex when I could just check the footage later. We'd installed cameras a few months back after a rash of thefts in our rural community, so at least we'd have evidence. By the time I got home that afternoon, a storm was rolling in. I booted up my laptop and logged into our doorbell cam's interface. The timeline clicked forward to 6:40 a.m., right when I'd noticed the cap open. Dark Chevy SUV pulled in, idling at the edge of the driveway, just past the fence line. The driver got out, hood up and stretched as if readying for a long job. He wore a hooded sweatshirt, the drawstrings dangling like nooses, and jeans so filthy they looked painted on. In one hand he held a length of plastic tubing, the kind you'd use to siphon gas. He circled our vehicles 3 times, each lap getting more confident. Then peeked into our detached garage, shining a flashlight inside without crossing the threshold. I held my breath when he climbed our front steps, craning his head left and right, searching for a gas can. He found ours, an empty, bright red can sitting innocuously by the side door. He grabbed it, flipped it upside down, and paused. That pause looked like relief, like he'd finally located his prize. Then he walked off camera and disappeared. I replayed the clip to make sure I saw right. He left without anything. I sent the video to Molly and her brother Jake. Seconds later, Molly answered, "That's our brother Dean. He's been busted off our property. He's been in and out of jail for stealing. You have to call the sheriff." Her words hit me like ice water. I picked up the phone and dialed the county sheriff's non-emergency line. A friendly deputy named Thompson answered. I gave him the rundown, keeping them vague, no names, just the facts. By the end of the call, Thompson sounded fed up. "That guy's a thorn in everyone's side," he muttered, and I got the sense they'd been tracking Dean for a while. He promised to note my report and said he'd keep an eye out. That evening, Alex asked how my day went. I told them everything, showing them the clip, pointing out the knife, and reading Molly's texts. Alex frowned, eyes cold with anger. "Let's not just sit on our hands," they said, and I agreed. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Dean sneaking around our property. I felt violated, like someone rummaged through my life's private things. Then I remembered the empty gas can. What if I turned it into bait? Something that would stick to him, literally. I stocked up on supplies, a half-gallon of gas, a cup and a half of sugar, loose glitter, fishing line, a Sharpie, tape, and a tube of Vaseline. Late that night, I mixed the gas and sugar in the can, shook it until the crystals dissolved into syrupy sludge, then poured in glitter until it clung to the sides. I added water to fill it up and taped a note to the bottom. "Smile. You're on camera, asshole." Then I smeared Vaseline around the handle and dusted it with more glitter so that whoever grabbed it would end up a walking disco ball. Finally, I tied it by fishing line to our porch railing just under the doorbell cam's gaze. By sunrise, the trap was set. Days passed. I checked the feed obsessively every morning, hoping for a sign. Nothing. No SUV, no hooded sweatshirt, no tubing. I wondered if Dean had moved on or if he'd outsmarted me. I tried to distract myself, went for walks with Alex, cooked a new curry recipe, even helped Mrs. McAllister with her vegetable garden. Every time I rounded the corner back toward home, I imagined Dean skulking behind the fence, waiting to strike. Then one morning, the can was gone. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the empty space on the railing. I blinked twice, grabbed my coffee, and rewound the footage to 6:30. A figure in a gray hoodie climbed the steps, paused, and yanked the can off its hook. Hesitated for a second, camera blinking behind them, then sprinted toward a white SUV parked at the fence line. I watched as they jumped in, foot on the pedal, and peeled out of the driveway in a plume of dust. Their face was mostly hidden, but the familiar posture, the way they clutched the glitter-speckled handle, it had to be him. I called Molly immediately and left a breathless message. "He got it. It's gone." Within the hour, Molly called back. "Checked with Dean. He said his SUV broke down this morning, out by the old mill road. He's texting us that someone put water in the tank and it's all gummed up." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled coffee down my shirt. "He actually fell for it," I said, tears in my eyes. By noon, I was on the phone with Deputy Thompson again. I didn't hide my satisfaction when I told him about the broken-down SUV and the water in the tank. He chuckled. "Looks like you caught him good." I sent him the new footage, him sliding off that handle, his face still concealed but too recognizable to Dean's mom and sister. Thompson promised he'd take it from there, and for the first time since the gas cap incident, I felt that tight knot of anxiety unravel. That night, Alex and I cracked open a bottle of cheap red wine on the porch. The Pacific wind whipped through the oaks overhead, carrying the promise of rain. We sat in silence for a while, watching the empty driveway. Finally, Alex nudged me. "So, pettiest revenge ever?" I grinned. "Definitely top 10. And as the darkness closed in, I realized this chapter was over, but with Dean out of commission again, I couldn't help wondering what mischief he'd cook up next. Either way, I'd be ready. By mid-morning the next day, the sheriff's office had clamped a boot on Dean's white SUV, right where he'd ditched it down by the old mill. Deputy Thompson called to let me know they'd towed it to impound and were dusting the fuel lines for evidence. I felt a weird pang, a mix of triumph and relief, knowing I'd played a small part in this. The town buzzed with gossip by noon. At Mrs. Ling's cafe, folks whispered over pies, throwing furtive glances toward my table while I sipped lukewarm coffee. I kept my head down and pretended to read the paper, but I couldn't hide my grin when someone muttered. He finally got what was coming. Back home, Alex and I decided to seize the afternoon. We tossed our boots in the hallway, peeled off our jackets, and cranked open the windows to let in the warm, salty air. It felt like freedom. Little victories like this made living in a sleepy farming town worthwhile. "I still can't believe you rigged that can," Alex said, shaking their head and laughing as they flopped onto the couch. "You're like a suburban Mac driver." I shrugged, flicking dust off my jeans. "Desperate times, right?" Besides, with all those sugar crystals and glitter, he looked like a Christmas ornament in motion. That evening, neighbors popped by to congratulate us. First came Jake McAllister, Molly's brother, holding 2 beers. "Glad you taught Dean a lesson," he said, handing me a cold one. Next, old Mr. Petrov, whose barn had been hit by tweakers twice last month, delivered a plate of honey-glazed ham and biscuits. "Your trick gave me hope," he mumbled, patting my shoulder. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about me. We were all tired of feeling vulnerable in our own yards. Seeing my little stunt succeed made people believe they could protect themselves, too. That night, sleep came easy. The moonlight spilled across the hardwood floors, and I fell into a dreamless rest, confident our driveway was safe, at least for now. 3 days later, the doorbell camera pinged again, but this time not with a thief. It was Molly, holding a small package in her hands. I ushered her inside, and she handed me an envelope covered in glitter residue. "It's for you," she said, cheeks pink. Inside was a card handmade with a watercolor tractor on the front and a gift card to the local hardware store. "For more supplies," she grinned. I laughed so hard I teared up. "You're incorrigible." Jake popped in behind her, carrying coffee. "Family meeting," he declared. We crowded into the kitchen and traded stories about Dean, how he spent last night ranting that his car's tank tasted like cake, and how the family dog refused to go near him. We all burst into laughter. The next morning, I woke up with an idea. Why not use this momentum to keep our community safe? I drafted a post on the local Facebook group. "Neighbors, let's form a nightly watch. Cameras, walks, whatever we've got. Together, we can keep Dean and anyone else off our property." Responses lit up immediately. By lunch, we had 10 households signed up. I emailed Deputy Thompson the list, and he promised extra patrols on our street. It felt good, knowing we were taking back control. A week later, I checked the sheriff's online case portal. Dean's theft charge was now officially filed with attached evidence, my videos, photos of the knife, even the glitter-coated can. The charge read attempted larceny and possession of burglary tools. I flushed with satisfaction. That afternoon, Alex and I hosted a potluck in our backyard. String lights twinkled overhead, children ran barefoot in the grass, and laughter bubbled like a creek. I watched friends pass a tray of Molly's famous corn fritters and felt that warm glow. This was the real victory. Strength in numbers. Community over criminals. As dusk settled, I slipped away from the crowd and stood by our gate. The night air was cool, the field silent. I thought of Dean, sitting in a cell, plotting his next scheme. I hoped he'd learn something, maybe that instinctive urge to steal wouldn't help him fill the emptiness he was chasing. I looked back toward the house, where Alex waved me over. I raised my bottle in a toast to the flickering lights, to the neighbors who'd had our backs, and to the absurd, glittery trap that started it all. We clinked bottles, and I realized this story wasn't just about petty revenge. It was about resilience, how a little creativity, a dash of daring, and a whole lot of community spirit could turn fear into power. And as the music drifted through the yard, I knew this was only the beginning. There were more chapters to write, more threats to face. But for now, we'd won this round, and the road ahead felt a little less lonely. By the time dawn cracked open the sky, I was already wide awake, heart thudding like a startled bird. The night's celebration had worn off, and the reality of our situation crept back in, Dean was behind bars. For now. But the threat of someone else, someone just as desperate, was always lurking. I splashed cold water on my face, rubbed my eyes, and pulled on jeans and sneakers. Today, I decided, I would deepen our neighborhood watch and maybe learn something about Dean's story beyond the burglary reports. I grabbed my notepad and headed out the door. First stop was the McAllister farmhouse. Molly met me on the front porch, hair in a messy bun, still half asleep in her pajamas. Coffee, she offered, swinging the porch swing back and forth. I took a mug and we settled into the creaky wooden seats, the morning chill turning curls of vapor above our cups. I've been talking to the sheriff's office, I said, my breath ghosting in the air. Want to do a community meeting next week, bring in crime prevention specialists, get everyone on the same page. Molly nodded, sipping her coffee. That sounds perfect. And I've got an idea for flyers, bright colors, simple bullet points, report suspicious activity. Secure your vehicles, look out for each other. I jotted down flyers and meeting. Great, I'll help you design them. Maybe we can set up one of those rotating patrol schedules. Families sign up for a 30-minute walk around the block each evening. She grinned. Yes, and I thought we could put reflective vests in the garage so people don't feel weird about being on patrol. By 7:30, we had the skeleton of a plan. I hugged Molly goodbye and jogged back home, lungs burning, mind buzzing with excitement. Alex was already in the kitchen, frying eggs and humming a folk song. I rattled off the meeting idea. Alex paused mid-flip, spatula in hand, and beamed. That's brilliant, they said. I'll help organize the volunteers and set up an email list, and I'll call my cousin, he's a web designer, he can put up a simple site for updates. We spent the next hour sketching out a flyer on butcher paper and drafting a rough agenda for the community meeting. By the time I left for work, teaching 5th grade at the little school down the road, I felt energized, like I'd done something worthwhile before even logging in to my district email. School felt surreal that morning. My students were buzzing about spring break plans, trading stories of camping trips and beach days. I handed out graded math quizzes, smiling at their triumphant grins. My mind drifted to Dean's case file, attempted larceny and possession of burglary tools, on record thanks to our cameras and the glittery gas can. At lunch, I scrolled through the neighborhood email thread. Already a dozen families had replied, "Count us in. Love the vests idea. Can't wait for the meeting." My heart warmed. This wasn't just about preventing theft, it was about forging connections in a place where, for too long, neighbors had kept to themselves. That afternoon, I stopped by the hardware store to pick up poster board, markers, and neon tape for the flyers. The store was quiet, just me, the owner, Mr. Patel, and a stack of paint cans. He recognized me and asked how things were going. Better, I think, I said, trying to sound casual. We've got Dean in jail, at least for a while. Mr. Patel's brows furrowed. I heard, he said. Tough kid, that one, always running with the wrong crowd. Trouble with the law since he was a teenager. His voice softened. But people can change, you know. I paused, considering. Do you think he's beyond help? He shrugged. I don't know him well, but addiction's a hell of a thing. Stealing gas won't fill whatever emptiness he's carrying. He handed me a roll of neon tape. Keep your community strong. That helps more than you know. I left feeling both hopeful and unsettled. Mr. Patel's words reminded me that Dean wasn't just a villain. He was a person in pain, trapped in cycles bigger than our driveway drama. That evening, I laid out all the meeting materials on our dining table, flyers, agenda, a sign-up sheet. Alex brought over a big mug of chamomile tea and perched on the edge of the table. Do you think a crime prevention specialist is overkill for our small town? I asked, marker in hand. No, Alex said firmly. It's one thing to watch our cars. It's another to understand patterns, to learn best practices, how to de-escalate situations, handle emergencies. Knowledge is power. I nodded. Okay, I'll email the sheriff's liaison and book someone. Before bedtime, I took a walk around the block, the reflective vest Molly had gifted me bright in the streetlights. I waved to Mr. Rodriguez, who was watering his lawn, to the Thompsons, who were locking up for the night, to the Bakers, who peeked out from behind the curtains and waved back shyly. I felt an unexpected swell of pride. This street was ours to protect. But halfway down the block, movement at the edge of the field caught my eye, a dark shape slipping behind the corn stalks. My heart leapt. I held my breath, the vest suddenly heavy on my shoulders. I crept forward, flashlight flickering over the stalks. Nothing. Just a stray cat scurrying across the stubble, I exhaled, embarrassed at my own jumpiness. But as I turned back, I noticed footprints in the soft earth beside the pavement, fresh, booted tracks heading toward my house. I knelt down to examine them, deep impressions at the heel, worn soles with a distinctive zigzag pattern underneath. My blood ran cold. I knew those soles. I'd seen them in Dean's SUV once, on a discarded flip-flop he tossed when climbing in. Couldn't be the same, right? But the size matched around a men's 9. I sprinted back home, adrenaline fueling my long legs. Inside, Alex looked up. What's wrong? They asked. We have tracks, I gasped, pointing to the front door camera feed. See those? Someone walked along the porch railing. Look at their shoes. Alex peered at the live view, then at me. Should we call the sheriff? I shook my head. Not yet, I want to catch them in the act. My pulse thudded. But we need more bait and better coverage. Let's set another trap. Over the next 2 days, we upgraded our defenses. I strung up motion-activated lights along the front and side of the house, bright beams that would snap on if anyone crept close. Alex rigged a low-voltage speaker near the front steps, hooked up to our phone, recorded a shout or dog bark to play if the camera senses movement. We added a second gas can, this one filled with a different mixture, a half-gallon of gas, a handful of red pepper flakes, a cup of salt, and just a hint of glitter so it still caught the light. I taped a new note to this can. For your next joyride, enjoy the burn. Your friendly neighborhood watch. I placed it in the exact spot Dean had taken the first one, tying it with fishing line and whispering, "Come and get it." As I finished, the evening sky bloomed pink and gold. The field across the street shimmered in the sunset. I paused, imagining someone skulking through those rows, eyeing our porch. It felt like a challenge, an invitation. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me jolt awake. I peeked at my phone, 2:17 a.m., no motion alerts yet. I dozed off, half dreaming of hooded figures and sparkling traps. Just before dawn, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I jolted upright and scrambled for it. A grainy clip loaded, a figure in a dark hoodie creeping up the steps, flashlight in hand. They paused at the second light sensor. Boom, the light flared on, bathing them in white brilliance. They yelped, stumbling back, and I swear I saw them clutch their chest in surprise. I lunged forward anyway, shoving the glittery can off the railing and yanking it so hard the fishing line snapped with a pop. Then came the telltale flash of pepper when the can's lid gave way, a cloud of fine red dust puffing into the night air. The figure coughed, spat on the porch, and raced back down the steps, arms flailing, leaving a glitter and salt smear behind. I yelled into the speaker, "Hey, leave it alone." Hit the record button. The figure paused, head whipping around, just a hood and jeans, no face, but they sprinted down the sidewalk, vaulting the fence into the neighbor's yard. I called Alex in a frenzy. They were at my side within seconds. We played back the footage together, freeze framing the boots, 9 men's zigzag sole. I held my breath. "It's him," I whispered. "Dean." Alex wrapped their arms around me. "We've got him," they said. "For good this time." And as the first rays of sunrise painted our porch gold, I realized the final chapter was nearly here. Not just Dean's downfall, but a community that refused to be prey. We'd turned our fear into a beacon, drawing justice into our own hands, and in the process, we'd rediscovered our strength. Now, as I sip my morning coffee and watch the mist lift off the fields, I know the end is close. The sheriff's already on his way, armed with new evidence. And when he walks through our gate, I'll be ready to close the book on this chapter, once and for all. When Deputy Thompson finally rolled up in his cruiser, the morning sun was shining so brightly, it almost felt like the whole world was on our side. Alex and I met him at the gate, me clutching my phone, replaying the clip of Dean coughing red pepper through the porch camera, Alex with a notepad full of timestamps and observations. Thompson tipped his hat, gave us a tired but genuine grin. "Looks like you two staged quite the sting," he said, pocketing his sunglasses. I led him around to the front porch, pointing out the glitter-smudged canister handle still stuck to the railing, bits of red residue clinging to the paint. He grabbed that at, I checked my phone, 5:58 a.m. exactly. Thompson nodded, scribbling it in his little leather notebook. He crouched down to examine the footprints we'd photographed the night before, the zigzag treads worn smooth in the center, the heels scuffed in a distinctive pattern. "Yep," he said quietly. "Matches the prints they logged at Dean's last arrest." He pulled out his radio and called dispatch. "Unit 5, you seeing these prints match case 24-113? A crackled voice replied, "Affirmative, prints match." Suspect's known shoe size, 9, right boot heavily worn. My stomach fluttered. All the pieces were clicking into place. I felt a surge of vindication, like I'd handed them the final puzzle piece. I watched Thompson stand, slipping his notebook into his breast pocket. "I'm taking these canisters and the camera footage as evidence," he said. "I'll get a warrant to search Dean's place and the SUV and impound." Alex squeezed my hand. "Looks like we did it," they whispered. A week later, we got the call we'd been waiting for. Dean's SUV had tested positive for both gasoline residue with sugar granules and traces of red pepper, and a search of his apartment turned up the plastic siphoning tube and, most damning, glitter-speckled gloves. He was officially charged with attempted burglary, possession of burglary tools, and criminal mischief for the pepper spread. On top of that, the judge added a condition: Dean must stay at least 500 feet away from our property and anyone on our neighborhood watch list. When Molly told me, her voice cracked with relief. "He can't bother us now," she said. "He'll have to go somewhere else for his hijinks." But there was a quiet note of sadness underneath her words, like even she felt the loss of brother, however troubled. I found myself wishing it didn't have to end with him in court and me as the victor. That night, Alex and I hosted a small victory barbecue, just a few neighbors, burgers on the grill, kids with sparklers in the yard. We toasted with lemonade and raised glasses to community spirit. Mrs. Petrov gave me a hug so tight I nearly toppled over. "You gave us all hope," she said. I realized our little trap and the subsequent legal victory had done more than catch a thief. It had knit us together. Folks who'd barely exchanged waves now shared stories and recipes and cautionary videos. Our Facebook group had blossomed into a true community hub, alerts for loose livestock, lost pets, and even impromptu block parties. But life has a way of reminding you that peace is never permanent. It was a month later when I noticed the first sign. Alex came home carrying a letter from Dean's public defender. I tore it open and read aloud. Your client has requested a modification to the restraining order, citing mental health needs and family reconciliation. My stomach dropped. Dean wanted to see his family again. He wanted to come back to the neighborhood he'd tormented. That night, I tossed and turned, the ceiling fan humming like a final countdown. I pictured Dean's gaunt face, eyes wild with desperation. I thought of his sister's tears when she visited him in jail. I thought of the thin line between hunger and crime, between addiction and relapse. The next morning, I called Deputy Thompson. He recommended I attend the hearing and speak to the judge about the potential risks. You've got every right, he said. Explain how serious the situation is. So 2 weeks later, I sat in the cold, gray courtroom, Alex beside me, Molly in the front row, and Mr. Patel clutching my hand for moral support. Dean's lawyer spoke first, talking about rehabilitation and second chances. I listened, heart pounding, cheeks flushed. When my turn came, I stood, hands trembling slightly as I gripped the lectern. I laid out the facts, the knife on our driveway, the attempted siphoning, the camera footage, the pepper trap that nearly blinded his eyes. I spoke of fear, how I panicked each time the doorbell rang, how my students asked if our house was safe, how neighbors worried about their kids playing outside. I wasn't asking for punishment, I was asking for protection. The judge listened quietly, eyes steady behind thick glasses. When I finished, he nodded. He granted a modified order. Dean could return to family property, but must remain at least 1 mile from our immediate neighborhood and complete a court-approved rehabilitation program. He set check-ins with a probation officer and mandated counseling. As we left the courthouse, the spring sun felt surprisingly gentle. I turned to Alex. It's a start, I said. They nodded. Let's hope it's enough. Back home, the neighborhood buzzed again, this time with cautious optimism. We updated our watch maps to mark the safe zone and extended patrols to the edge of Dean's new boundary. Molly organized a welcome basket for Dean's youngest niece, who'd been too scared to visit. We hung bunting at the edge of the restricted mile radius, half celebration, half warning. Months later, life settled into a new rhythm. Dean completed his rehab, visited his family under supervision, and the only trouble he caused was a loud argument over a forgotten rent check. The plastic tubing ended up confiscated and destroyed, the glitter and pepper washed away in the spring rains. One evening, Alex and I sat on the porch swing, sipping iced tea. The sun dipped behind the fields, painting the sky lavender. You ready for our next project? Alex asked, grinning. I laughed, setting my glass on the railing. Only if it involves less glitter. We watched the fireflies emerge, tiny sparks against the dusk. As the neighborhood lights blinked on one by one, I felt a deep sense of peace, not because we'd vanquished every threat, but because we'd found strength together. The trap had been a crazy idea born of frustration, but it became the spark that lit our community's courage. And maybe that was the real victory, not catching Dean, but catching ourselves, learning that when we stand together, even the darkest fears can't siphon away our sense of home.